Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Down by Law, hosted by your favorite personal injury attorney, Daryl A. Gray, partner at the law firm of Wright and Gray, located downtown in beautiful New Orleans, Louisiana. This is Down by Law. We have a very, very special, historic, iconic, all around just living legend guest today, Miss Leona Tate. And with Miss Tate, we have also an extension, I would say an extension of Miss Tate's legacy. Is that safe to say, Tremaine? Miss Tremaine 19 Riley. Did I say that correct?
Yes, you did.
Guys, we have a very, very profound show for you guys today. We're going to talk about Miss Tate's legacy as it relates to the history of the city of New Orleans, and from in a greater context of our culture in America, in the United States, of school desegregation. Miss Tate was one of the first black, now I rarely use the word African American because I think that's a misnomer. We're all American, just happen to be different cultural standings or origins. So black is the word I love to use. I own it, you know what I mean? So she was one of the first black students to integrate the school system, not only in New Orleans, but in the United States. Is that fair to say, Ms. Tate? You were up there.
Yeah, lower school grade.
Lower school, because you had the Little Rock Nine and things of that nature.
High school.
Yeah. So, from a little kid's perspective, how old were you at the time? 6? 6 years old. She walked into a previously all-white elementary school with 2 other 6-year-olds and integrated the school system with, I think Ms. Ruby Bridges was at another school. Is that correct? So we're gonna unpack. We're gonna discuss that experience and how it affected her life and, by extension, the lives of so many people in New Orleans, everybody in New Orleans essentially, and what she's doing today and what her journey has meant for us as a people, and what we can continue to do to effect change. Because the name of Ms. Tate's foundation is the Leona Tate Foundation for Change. Is that right? And she's doing some very profound and important things here in the city of New Orleans. So this lady has dedicated her life. I know as a 6-year-old, you don't have a big choice, but the fact that your parents put you in a position to change the narrative and make history in the lives of so many people, and that you have, at this point in your life, voluntarily chose to continue that journey, speaks volumes about you and your dedication to change and equality in America. So, Ms. Tate, welcome to the show. We appreciate you. I'm going to give you a round of applause for your amazing contribution to my life and the lives of others. So, I know without you, I wouldn't be able to, accomplish what I've accomplished, and I'm appreciative. Just want you to know that. I know you probably don't hear that enough. What do they say? Give people their flowers while they're here. Kudos to you. What you like? Roses, tulips? I got it all for you. Whatever you want. So welcome to the show, you guys. And Tremaine is here. And Tremaine is the program director for Ms. Tate's Foundation. She's also the vice president, acting vice president of the board for the foundation. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So we got some powerhouses here. We got some people who are really working every day in the community to keep things alive and keep that change moving, because we still need change. We still need things to be better for everybody. Okay. So, Ms. Tate, if you would give us the honor of, I'll give you a little introduction, but if you could just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Right now, you want to know about myself?
Yeah,
Or
just give us the current.
Right now, I'm a mother of 3.
Big job.
Grandmother of 12.
Wow.
And great-grandmother of 7.
Wow. The legacy extends, life goes on. You have done your job to keep that in the forefront. Congratulations to all of that.
Still doing it, but
Okay.
I'm retired, and
Where'd you retire from? What were you doing? Retired.
post office, well, the phone company really was my longest staff.
Okay.
South Central Bell, then 18 and 2.
South Central Bell.
Do you remember that?
Oh my yes. Bell, was it Bell South? South Central Bell. Yeah, I remember all of this stuff. And then, like I said,
People say my bell.
my Bell. When did you start there?
In 1975.
So that was something different too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was something different because, obviously we couldn't get jobs and all of that stuff.
I
So,
got hired during the bus strike.
wow.
Oh, I said bus strike.
This lady here, she done seen some stuff, huh? Okay, what else? Like you worked it, you retired from doing that, and then
I stepped out on faith. I took odd jobs. I worked at a St. Thomas Community Health Center when I decided to make my move for the foundation, and I realized that I couldn't shuffle a job and try to put the foundation together, do what I wanted to do with the foundation. So I just stopped working. I just had to step out on faith.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to do it. It was rough for a while, trust me, but I had to do it.
it always is starting out. Whenever you're doing something that's profound and is of a certain magnitude, you're gonna have some struggles. Like they say, atlas struggle. When you're pushing a boulder up a hill, you're gonna have to, deal with some difficulties. But when you get to the top of the hill, everything seems to be, easier, maybe distant. So.
I don't know about easy.
Because y'all still working, and that's a
Right.
good thing, and you're working for other people, which is another, sacrificing for the greater good is something that we all should do to a varying degree in our lives. But when you take on that challenge the way that you've taken it on, it's just, it's humbling, and it warms my heart to see that kind of stuff, and that's something that needs to be championed and supported. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to make sure we got you on here to talk about what you're doing in the foundation. And I'm so glad that Tremaine is here as well, because again, you're talking about a bridge between a iconic, legendary figure and somebody who's younger, who's putting into effect and implementing those sacrifices and changes and principles that Ms. Tate fought for and wants to see in the world. So that's wonderful. You started the foundation in what year?
Well, we put it together in 2009, but it wasn't my intention to start a foundation in the beginning. I just came back after Katrina and tried to get McDonald 19 opened up as a school again. We was only putting one school back in the little ninth ward. I said, well, they don't have enough schools, nobody can come back home.
Right.
But that wasn't going to be the process for the school. So I knew that building needed to be something, but everybody that I asked what we're going to do about it wanted to know what my foundation was about.
So then she told me, let's start a foundation.
Let's start a foundation to get our answer, So we did.
So, and for those who don't know, and we're gonna get into all of this a little bit more, but McDonald 19 was the school that you integrated.
Yes.
So obviously that's near and dear to your heart. Since that process, and the fact that it was closed, you said we got to do something about it. That's a historic building in the city of New Orleans. It's a part of the fabric of change and the civil rights struggle and movement. So obviously, that school shouldn't be shuttered. You know what I'm saying? It has to be used, and you guys have repurposed it at this point, right?
Yes, we have.
So You saw the school, let's go back. You saw the school was closed. You're like, you know what? Y'all tripping. Let's
But
get
it
this.
has been closed really since 2004. That's another story. But I knew just visiting other schools in the city made me know that we needed to do something educational as far as civil rights.
Right.
Back down to 19 because the children just didn't know.
They didn't understand the history.
Yeah.
Or it's so amazing. I grew up in New Orleans, and I didn't learn about them.
Right.
I didn't know the history of McDonald 19 until we met, and I was an adult.
And, but isn't that's something. Like how do we not push that to the forefront of the conversation about the city? Like, that's historic. You're talking about 3 small children, 3 small girls walking into the school and dealing with and taking on the weight of the world, just to make things better for everybody that comes behind them.
You'd be surprised how many people did not know
Wow.
the history.
And obviously everybody should know about it. So the things that you guys made a determination to do is pretty profound. So that's where we are now, right? So real quick, I want, this is Down by Law, featuring Daryl Gray. I'm my mother's favorite child. She tells me this all the time. 504-582-9422. We're talking to Leona Tate and Tremaine Knighton Riley. We're talking about history. We're talking about change. We're talking about, justice, what's important to every person listening to our voices right now. And it's an ongoing struggle. You can never stop. We haven't reached the point of justice. So we're going to continue to deal with some of the issues until if we lose people like Ms. Tate and Tremaine, if they stop doing the work that's needed, then everybody's life will be different. We'll regress. So this foundation is important, and we want to champion and support and promote these kind of people in the community, especially when you have somebody as iconic. Like think about like everybody knows worldwide. Like there's a multitude of people that understand that at one point in time we had separate lives and facilities and schools in America. Everybody understands the history of racism in America. Now they may not completely get it and can state facts and things of that nature, but they understand like that was a thing here, right? And this lady to the left of me was one of the people at 6 years old that cracked open that perverse institution and those unjust legalized laws. Yeah, it was the law of the land. It was the law in America at the time when it was not the law, they changed it, but she was one of the people introduced that change in reality based upon the law, which took a little while because the law changed, and I think the law, I got all this stuff right here in front of me. So real quick, I'm gonna give everybody, because I am a lawyer. Not only am I a lawyer, I'm a history major. That's why I think I'm my mother's favorite child, because she knows that I'm into all of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to give everybody a quick rundown as to what took place before Ms. Tate walked into McDonald 35.
19.
I'm sorry?
19.
McDonald 19, I'm sorry. Like 35 McDonald's. Like, I mean, that's another story in and of itself. But McDonald 19 in 1960, right? November 14th, 1960. So, and I want to give out the social media handles. It's at TEP Center, that's on Instagram, and at Leona Tate Foundation, that's also on Instagram. What's the websites? What are the websites?
The website's www.leonatatefoundation.org or tapcenter.org.
Tapcenter.org. And real quick before I start giving this historical rundown, which is gonna take me about 3 or 4 minutes of talking time. Let's talk about TEP Center. Just real quick, give them a brief description of what that is. I love it, man. Stamp the legacy. You know what I'm saying? And then, she didn't, I know, what's the involvement of the other ladies right now?
They support me whenever I do. They don't live locally, well, Chester lives in Plaza, but they live in Oklahoma since Katrina. But if I need her, she comes.
She didn't make it about her, she made it about them.
That's the thing.
It's all, the journey was.
We got a bond that can't be broken.
Ooh, say that.
When you see them together, oh goodness.
Wow. That's like, how people pledge fraternity sororities and you go through different things. Like even if you went to Army boot camp with somebody, you have a different kind of bond. So can you imagine the bond that they have? Y'all were the only 3 kids in the school at the time, huh? Wow. So I know y'all have an amazing, and that's wonderful that you took those intentional steps to name this memorial center after the 3 of you guys, because that's history. That's history. So real quick, let's talk about Miss Tate's whole journey started with the fact that in America we had school segregation, meaning that there was a separate school for black kids and there was a separate school for white kids, and the two shall never mix. The two shall never mix, and you were never supposed to. You could not go to school. Legally, you could not go to school with somebody of the other race. And that's think about that. That's.
I never picked up on the difference in the color of skin color. I get every color in my family, so that
it's illogical, and it's illogical, and that's one of the things I always like to point out ridiculous things, and when it comes to racism and discrimination, and just that's one of the most illogical things, especially here in New Orleans, because you got people that look like everything, and it's a cultural distinction that the culture is the same, but it's just like you look like this, you're like that. Doesn't make sense. That's insane. But anyway, so. School segregation was based upon, slavery essentially. It started the origin of all this stuff came from slavery. But in terms of the actual desegregation of schools, that started with Brown v. Board of Education, and I want to say Brown v. Board was in '54. Yeah, that's a huge landmark Supreme Court case. And when you go to law school, that's one of the biggest things you learn. It's like one of our fundamental case studies, Brown v. Board of Education, because it changed the dynamic in terms of racial interaction and racial discrimination in America. It tore down the legal principle of separate but equal. And separate but equal started in 1896 with Plessy v. Ferguson, another New Orleans situation. Plessy v. Ferguson was a case where a gentleman here in New Orleans, a black gentleman here in New Orleans, was riding a streetcar, some simple, everyday life stuff. And this is why segregation was so important, because it affected people's everyday lives. It was just like it made everything difficult for you, like just simple things like going to school, taking a streetcar, churches, things of that nature. It was all affected by segregation. So Plessy v. Ferguson started separate but equal, and separate but equal said that it's not discriminatory if you give black people and white people access to the same services, but separately, right? So inherently, that's going to be a problem because they got a streetcar for black people, well, they got a section of the streetcar for black people, they got a section of the streetcar for white folks. The section for black folks is not going to be treated the same as the section for white people. I'm sorry, it's going to be it will never be equal. It will never be equal.
was never equal.
And think about it from a school standpoint. So you got all of this stuff, you know, this principle of separate but equal that has been established as law, a law of the land. Like that was if you violated that rule, you were going to be legally punished. It wasn't a social thing like I want to be around you, I don't want to be around you. It was a legal principle. So if any violation of said law would render you subject to punishment, you could be punished for that.
Right.
Whether it be fine or criminal, whatever, and that's probably was that was determined locally more so than anything by state laws. But there was consequences for you breaking those established laws. So Plessy v. Ferguson kicked it all off, and it happened right here in New Orleans. And Miss Tate was the one of the catalysts of changing it once the law was changed almost 100 years later. Well, yeah, it was something like that, yeah. Yeah, it was a long time, 67 years. All the different speed, that's the second part of it, like, yeah. We changed the rule, but, y'all gotta come back to court to make sure that they do it in a timely fashion. So what does that mean? You start talking about legal times, it could be anything, like it could be 10 years from now. Yeah, so Plessy v. Ferguson, Brown v. Board of Education. That Brown v. Board of Education was a unanimous decision by the courts too. So that's something that's huge. A unanimous decision that all the justices decided like this is the rule. Even right to this day, and that's important because like if you look at the Supreme Court now from a political standpoint, you have different appointees that were appointed by different presidents, and politics always plays a role in how the courts are packed and how justices are appointed. So you're going to see some division there along political lines, and that the Supreme Court is the law of the land. What the Supreme Court says, if an issue gets to them and they rule on it, that is going to go down and be instilled across the board for everybody in the United States. So having the court make a unanimous decision under Brown v. Board is huge.
Spoke volumes.
It spoke volumes of the
Still in court every day, still trying to stop it.
Well, you know how they
Even
go.
after we got in the building, it was still in court.
Let me tell you something about lawyers. They try every angle. They're gonna try 100 times before they accept defeat or realize that we can't do anything else with that. So they probably picked that opinion apart and tried for so many years and so many different ways of changing or finding loopholes, because this is what we do with good lawyer. You find a loophole and you shoot everything you can through it before they close it. So I can imagine the stuff that Thurgood and that crew had to go through when dealing with some of this stuff from Brown v. Board and the progeny of the cases that came out of it. Have you ever met him? Did you meet him? Thurgood Marshall?
I remember seeing him. I'm sure my mother knew him well.
Wow.
Yeah, I can remember seeing him.
Listen, let me tell you something, man. That I'm not a fanboy, right? I don't get excited. Man, yeah, exactly. I don't get excited about a lot of stuff. I've sat on planes next to celebrities. I've met so many celebrities. But when I think about Thurgood Marshall, because I know what he meant for everybody, and especially black lawyers that came behind, I'm like, oh my God, can you imagine me? I had this funny story about Thurgood Marshall. They say he used to watch soap operas. When he was on Supreme Court, he would sit in the back and watch soap operas until it was time for him to go in and listen to arguments. And he said he was just amazed when he did that stuff. But I guess he was tired. You know what I mean? By the time he got to the court, he was like, man, I just want to do something that's just normal. I'm gonna watch soap operas. So he had a thing about watching soap operas apparently. So that's crazy, man. It's just the profoundness of the situation and the fact that we still got Ms. Tate here to tell her story and talk about that. So, when you start talking about separate but equal, all right, you know what? We're gonna take a call. Again, if you call in 504-582-9422, Miss Evelyn. Miss Evelyn, you're on the line.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Hi.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I knew your mother was the one who put you when you all were that age, but you kept on to happened in the 60s and all, through the civil rights ages, going into the stores that on Canal Street, black only, the water fountains, black only. I would drink at those water fountains, and when they come to me, I would say, I don't see no black water coming up.
I like that one.
I know, ain't that something?
I said, I don't see no black water coming out here, black only. And I would go and test. We sit down at the Woodward counter, which I came here in 1961 from southwestern Louisiana, Abbeville, Lafayette area. And this is in my home. I'm married here, have 2 sons and grandchildren, and we still working in the background. Started a nonprofit ministry, an outreach program called Sunshine Ministry, and working with A to Z resources. We have a lot of work to do. And hello, Alvin, and the rest of you on there at the station. We have a lot of work still to do. Because we're not turning around. We're not turning around.
That's right.
And I thank you for the McDonald 19, keeping that building. Right now, I'm wondering about the other one, McDonald 11. The historical building they want to tear down. Put millions of dollars to tear that building down, where it can be utilized and it's for education, educational
Picked it up, they moved it.
Fix it up. Move it or fix it up. It can be fixed up right there.
Yeah.
And also Israel Augustine. I want that school, y'all. I want that school right there by the courthouse, the jailhouse. I want it, and I need to know how we can open it up, because there's a lot of work here. We can stop massive incarceration if we start from kindergarten up. Well, babies, even when they're unborn, and training the mothers and all, and early childhood education. Invest that money into education and life training skills and the well-being of the people.
Yes, ma'am.
Especially African Americans, we need to come together.
Yes, ma'am.
We need to come together to make changes.
All right, Ms. Evans.
Okay?
All right, we appreciate you. All right, thank you for the call. You too. Bye-bye. All right. Yeah, so, I mean, another, person, it's a really, you got to look at it from a standpoint. You still got a lot of people who are around, alive, that can talk to you about discrimination. Like she said, and that's a logical child's approach to how you look at discrimination. I don't see no black water coming out of this water fountain. What are y'all talking about? Like, y'all trying to pull a trick on me? Ain't that something? Like how children don't understand that, And if children don't get it, then it doesn't make sense. Like, it's illogical, So we got to kind of keep that stuff in perspective. But going back to, where we were, Plessy v. Ferguson kicked it all off, the separate but equal thing. And, that entered the Jim Crow era. A lot of people hear the term Jim Crow, they don't know what it means. But Jim Crow was essentially the embodiment of those laws that prevented us from, being free, and kept everything separated, instilled those black and white water fountains, those black and white restrooms, the voting rights that kept us from voting and things of that nature. So Jim Crow was the name of the institution of discrimination, legal discrimination in the South. So from Plessy v. Ferguson, we got Jim Crow, but essentially from Jim Crow and Plessy v. Ferguson was a child of the black codes that were established after slavery to extend slavery. In my opinion, we didn't get free once the war ended and the civil war was over with. We weren't free because you go to jail and be incarcerated by.
That was the new type of slavery.
Exactly, it was the new slavery. You know what I mean? Like those black codes. Any way to continue the exploitation of black folks. You know what I mean? And that's what, you had the black codes in between slavery and the black code, and in between slavery and Plessy v. Ferguson, which was the Supreme Court's opinion on instilling these discriminatory practices and making them law. You had those black codes that socially made and legally, to some degree, made us, continue slavery. So it's a long history and a long journey that a lot of people don't know about. And it's important for us to understand the history so we can understand, one, how important, the changes have been, and how, from this particular conversation, how Ms. Tate's life was a culmination of that change and what needed to change. So that's where we are. Just for a quick little recap. And there's another thing people don't understand. We had slavery was established in 1526. So 500 years of discrimination. That's a long time. And people talk about we free. I don't know.
It's the verdict still up.
Wait. Let's get Reverend Calhoun on the phone. Reverend Calhoun, how you doing? Good morning.
Good morning. The suppression that's going on now of black historical facts is still slavery. They don't want us to know what our children, what we went through, what our parents went through during those times that you identified. That's why we have legislators now that's out to just, we want to ignore that. We don't want to talk about that. That's it. They're trying again to make it a law that we don't talk about what our people went through. So what my little thoughts are quickly is that we can move this forward by supporting the Tate Foundation.
Right.
We need to really speak to how we can make sure that our kids know, our children know what happened back then. So any donations y'all can give to the Tate Foundation would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. Donate. Thank you, Reverend Calhoun. We appreciate that.
Reverend Calhoun.
If you go onto the website or if you go to the social media accounts, you can do some. You need to study and figure out what's going on and look at everything. But there's also the information where you can send a donation, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well.
We do appreciate all of the community support.
Right.
Definitely.
And Reverend Calhoun made an important point that I was going to bring up later in the conversation. This Common Core issue is a current issue. It's a hot topic issue right now in America, and it's washing over the history of slavery and discrimination in America, and we gotta keep that out there because we want to keep talking about that, because if you don't know your history, you don't need to repeat it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that's something that we gotta keep in the forefront. And just by way of perspective, again, I try to always bring things into a center point so everybody can get it. My mother was born in 1960. Ms. Tate was walking into the school to desegregate the school in 1960. So, they got this thing on what they say on the internet, I'm gonna tell my kids this, like I'm gonna tell my kids this so and so, I'm gonna tell my kids that, because of a young woman's skin color, your grandmother, who was born in 1960, when she was born, because of her skin color, she couldn't go to school with white kids. And my kids are right now probably one or two black kids in their class. So think about that. You not only could you not go to school with white kids, you were treated as an inferior and treated differently. So that's pretty profound. Miss Tate. So I told you my 8-year-old daughter was named Leah. She wanted me to ask you, because she's been, she knows about this stuff. I was surprised she knew so much about it. She's like, I want to know some details, ask her a question. So let's do that. Let's talk about, we came through the history, we know where we are, we know how we got to where you were, you became an unintentional icon, unintentional legend at 6 years old. So let's talk about that. How did you become a part of the McDonald 3?
An application was in the paper for students in the ninth ward. And my mother sent it in. I understand 100 and maybe 40-something applications were turned in.
Wow.
And they only chose 5 families, but only 4 participated. And I was one of the 4. We were psychologically tested. I 5 then, so I know we couldn't write or anything, so we had to. I can remember answering questions for a white lady and white man. I must have talked my way through that one. That's really how the selection process was. But you had to go to a school that was in your district, because schools were by districts. So that's why we were at McDonald 19 and we was at William Friends. We lived in 2 different districts.
Okay. And you were, y'all were living in the lower 9 at the time, right? And how far was the school from your house?
Less than 5 blocks.
So you were familiar with the school?
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, you had saw it before, yeah.
I've seen it, yeah.
You can't walk, 5 blocks from the corner. That's
Children a bit older than myself.
Okay.
We were in different households, but they were aware.
If you're newly tuned in, this is Down by Law, featuring Daryl Gray. I have Miss Leona Tate, who is a living legend. I'm gonna keep saying that because people need to understand. When we're asking for donations, we're asking you to give this wonderful woman flowers now, because she's still fighting the fight, the one that was started at 6 years old. She's still fighting that fight. So you guys can donate. We're gonna continue to give information out as well. It's TEP Center. That's on Instagram. Leona Tate Foundation on Instagram. Tremaine, what are the websites again?
LeonaTateFoundation.org and TEPCenter.org.
We're talking about a historic moment in American history, New Orleans history, the Tate integrating the school system here as a 6-year-old. So Ms. Tate was just giving us some information. We're gonna continue with it. Tell us about how did your parents handle all of this stuff? Like they made the conscious effort to basically experiment with you for the sake of everybody else. You know what I mean? Which is, you're saying, hey, I'm gonna allow my kid to be one of the first. Who wants to be the first doing anything? It's like talking in class. Like nobody wants to talk in class, but who wants to be the first person to walk into a segregated school to desegregated? So how did you, even when you got old, I'm sure you talked to your parents about it. Like, how does it? What were they thinking? What was their process with it?
Oh, God, I can't remember. It was mainly my mother, because my father worked in an area which was St. Bernard Parish.
Okay.
And a lot of the protesters came from that area. Okay. So his identity was not known for a long time. My mother, I'd tell anybody if I had an ounce of courage that she had, I'd be dangerous, because she didn't play, right? But she knew she had paid her taxes just like everybody else, and she felt like I could go to a better school, And they didn't talk too much around me about what was happening, because they didn't want me to be afraid, and I never was afraid. And I knew I was going to a different school. I was happy about that, because I was very uncomfortable at my old school.
Why so?
It was overcrowded.
Okay.
It was very
Wow. Yeah.
We were on what we called a platoon session back in those days. But some kids had to go in the morning and some had to go in the evening. That's just how many students were registered at one school.
That's profound. And that's another symptom of that segregation, not having the proper facilities to learn. Like, there was some, I was reading statistics, and it said that in 1940 and 1945, in Florida, for example, white school property value was $70 million, compared to $4.5 million for black school property, state-owned school property. And the population of black people in Florida was 42%. So almost half and half. And the astronomical difference between the property value of the school system, the state school system essentially, was that big of a gap. And it shows, like you're talking about the platoon system, like we don't have the facility to give you guys an equal education. So how is it separate but equal? I mean, you lack books, you lack supplies, all of that stuff. Like, how is it? So you're starting at
a deficit.
At a deficit. Ain't that something?
Right.
So you were uncomfortable at their schools, and you feel like, oh my God, I get to go to a different school. It's gonna be, everything's gonna be different.
I had no idea.
Had no idea what you were getting yourself into. So, like, I mean, I'm sure you had friends and all that stuff at the old school. I guess, wait, did you miss them? Did you miss your friends from your old elementary? Did you see them in the neighborhood?
I don't remember. I cried so much at my old school. I don't know if I had friends there or not. That's how uncomfortable I was. I would go home in the evening, call mom and say, I cried again, you know. So I was really not happy there. My mother was very protective even before then. So, you know, if she wasn't outside, we weren't outside. So,
But you came from a good household. You came from, you know, and those were the test cases. You know, people who cared about their children having a better life. And like your mother said, she paid taxes like everybody else. That's about fundamental fairness. It's really a simple principle when you think about it, but the fact that America kept that as a dividing point is insane at the end of the day. So, what was the first day of school like?
when I woke up that morning, my house was, we had a village, you know what I'm saying? We had family and friends that helped out to prepare for that day. You wouldn't have thought it was a holiday, you know, everybody coming and getting things done. And that's what it seemed like, and everybody was in a very good spirit. And then all of a sudden, a black car pulled up in front of the door, and the house got real quiet. So that was the U.S. Marshals coming to pick us up. So I remember my mother and I going to the door, and she told me, she said, when you get in that car, you sit to the back of that seat and do not put your face to the window.
Wow.
Obedience played a big part in what we had to do. We had to really listen, you know, and we were prepared, you know, they were preparing us even a year ahead. We got to the school, and it took less than 3 minutes, and when we turned on, we came in from the rear of the building, and we made a right turn on St. Claude Avenue. Only thing I could think, and what it looked like was, it was Mardi Gras, and a parade was coming. And why I had to go to school on Mardi Gras is
Wow.
what I thought.
Wow.
Because that's what it looked like. I could see police holding a crowd back, you know. And the only thing at 6 years old, I could relate to, because I knew that happened there. You know? I said, no, that's not the case. You know, so, but we did enter the building and approached the principal's office and was asked to take a seat on the bench. And that was in the hallway outside of the office. Sat there half the day before we even got placed in the classroom. Jesse Gill and I played hopscotch on the tiles of the floor. That's how long we had been sitting out there.
So, I mean, at that point, I guess they were trying to figure out how they were going to facilitate the enrollment.
What they were gonna do?
What did they want to do?
They want to do it. They probably working the phones.
They
doing
made
all-
us let you in, but they didn't say we had to actually teach you.
Right.
They didn't.
Wow.
So you can sit here till we're ready to do whatever we want to do.
So what happened next?
We finally got placed in the classroom. Now, what was going on in between that time, I don't really know or remember, but I can remember one of the marshals saying he had a court order in his pocket to get it done, and it was going to get done. And they finally placed us in the classroom, and I can remember trying to talk to the white girl, because it was a full class of students, you know, when I got in there, and it was like I was invisible. Just like we were prepped, they were prepped. She didn't look my way. She didn't answer me. She didn't do anything. By 3 o'clock, they were all gone. If mamas and daddies were coming in there pulling them out like a whirlwind.
Wow.
There were only 3 left in the entire building. 2 brothers were there for the remainder of the week, but we never saw them. They were in a different part of the building. That lasted for a year and a half.
For a year?
Second grade.
For a year and a half, y'all were the only kids in the school.
Couldn't go outside to play. We couldn't eat from the school. We had to bring our food and beverages. We couldn't see out of the windows. The windows were papered up. No one could see in. We couldn't even go on the side of the classroom where there was a window. Didn't realize how confined or how protected we were being, you know, was being handled. But we were fine. We were comfortable. We had a very good first grade teacher. And
She was a white teacher.
yeah, there was no black teachers there. No. None.
Wow.
None at that time. junior high school.
So they were only the 3 students, but then there were teachers in every classroom
With no students.
with no students.
With no students. Can you, I mean, it's just, you know, it's, you know, hearing the actual details. You know, you know the story existed, you know the experience was there, but hearing the details on how a 6-year-old had to go through this process on a day-to-day basis. And you know, you talked about earlier, the high school students, they're more mature, they can process things differently. You know, it's gonna be a little bit different for them. Still a painful and tough experience, but for a child of that age, 6, and to just go through that process just because of the color of your skin. You know, for the other side to take the extraordinary steps of taking all of the kids out. Like nobody was going to allow their kids to go to school with y'all because of what y'all look like. You come from a good family, your parents paid taxes, they worked, you know, your father worked, y'all had a, you know, normal life going on, but you weren't good enough to go to school with these other folks. And it's just, it's profound, it's heartbreaking, but it's also encouraging to know that people took those steps to change that and to be the first and to be here to talk about it. It's just an amazing thing. And how did you, I mean, did you feel, my daughter wanted to know, did you feel excluded? Did you feel like you weren't a part of the mainstream society?
I didn't feel that way. Probably because I didn't understand
Right.
during that time. I was comfortable. I was not in that crowd anymore. You know, I was really felt.
Okay. Well, let's take another call. Yeah, 504-582-9422. This is Down by Law. We're talking to the legendary, iconic Miss Leona Tate, with her friend and colleague and all around right hand, Tremaine. Miss Amanda, you're on the line.
Yes, I'm on the line.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm proud of what she's doing. Because during the 60s, this was Jim Crow law. Believe me, I'm from Fayetteville, and all we had was one school for all the blacks. My father and mother had 12 children, and we had, I was in college, there was 4 in college, and the rest of them was in 4 in middle school, and I think 2 was at home. I don't know if any of you remember, but when they integrated the school, the 4 in middle school, they picked them up, brought them to down there, I forgot the name of it right now, and there was no to let them in. There was white people, as you say, just like it was carnival, and they were shaking the buses, trying to kill them, not let them into the school. I tell you, it was something else. And the end of Perez had a lot to do with St. Bernard Parish. And my father was one of the first to get people in St. Bernard Parish to vote. Him and a couple of people from New Orleans. I tell you, I have a cousin and a brother that integrated UNO. They were the first to integrate UNO, and they had problems. There was a black teacher that was my cousin. His name was Raphael Azariah. He was the first.
Quite well.
Okay. Well, we appreciate the call. Tremaine, we talked about, what is it called? Well, you mentioned Fazardville. Is that Fazardville? Talk about that. What is that?
So Miss Amanda was saying that that's where she's from, but it was it's a community that was basically neglected and just left.
Really?
Yes. St. Bernard Parish.
And it was a Yeah, so, I mean, you know, I told you that the show goes very quickly, so we almost done. But I wanted to ask Ms. Tate one final question about her experience before we start talking about all the programming and stuff that y'all have at the center. Living your life the way you've lived it and experiencing what you experienced, would you have put your kids through that? Would you have taken your kids out of their school and put them into that situation?
I think I would have.
So you try to say you're not as brave as your mother, but obviously you got the same amount of courage when it comes down to making.
They probably wouldn't have wanted to go.
Right.
They don't like this limelight at all, but I think I would have, but I kind of think, that the village part ended kind of fast for our parents.
Okay.
Of the support.
Yeah.
You know, just that we need more of that.
Tremaine, let's give them a real quick information, contact information if they want to donate.
So if you'd like to support the foundation, you can, of course, visit our website, leonatatefoundation.org. And then also follow us on all social media outlets, Facebook and Instagram, Leona Tate Foundation and Tech Center.
Okay.
So both of those ways, and that can support our programming as well as the completion of the Tate, Etienne, and Prevost Interpretive Center.
Donate. You know, this is a huge deal in the city of New Orleans, Lower Ninth Ward community. All kind of programs, literacy programs, business youth, ringing the bell, which we talked about, that core curriculum stuff. That's something to get teachers to bring that curriculum into their teaching, that Common Core, I guess is what you call it or whatever. Donate, guys. We want to give them. Matter of fact, this is what we're doing as a law firm today to kick off the donations. We have a check for $1,000 for y'all here today.
Are you serious?
Yeah. What you do with the check, Drew?
You put it in your backpack, Mr. Grant.
Oh, it's right here. I
I
got it in
should
my
have kept it
backpack.
in my purse because I hope you
Yeah, you
didn't.
should have kept it in your purse.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
handed
so
it to
I
you.
mean, no, we don't talk it, we walk it now. Right, great kids. We have a charitable arm of our law firm, and we always try to support. And this is something we are compelled to do for the history, the legacy, and the continued change that you guys are bringing about in New Orleans. So happy to do it.
Thank you.
We're appreciative of this conversation and y'all's presence in the community. So this is the least we can do. Look, Tremaine got a hand up.
No, I'm gonna give it to her.
Oh,
But
Tremaine
I
got a
want,
hand up.
she said, "Give me the money." But I just wanted to share just how that will support us.
Okay.
So the TEP Center, we didn't get to really tell you what the TEP Center is. So, but it's 3 floors of amazingness. So the first floor will be exhibit space, so to tell the history of the McDonough 19 School and desegregation in New Orleans and other civil rights stories that surround that for our community.
Right.
And then we have 2 floors of affordable housing, 25 units of affordable housing for seniors age 55 and older.
That's huge.
So it is really going to be an amazing campus. We also have the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond coming in to teach undoing racism courses from kindergarten through college. So that campus at 5909 St. Claude, when it opens, will be something to experience.
And that's such a great repurposing of that historic building. I'm so proud. I'm so happy to support you guys. Ms. Tate, thank you so much. We appreciate the conversation.
You must visit.
Oh, I'm coming. Don't worry about it. This is Down by Law, guys. Another great episode. We appreciate you all tuning in. We'll see you next week. That went by too fast.